Hey, church, it's Pastor Jeff. Um, Glad to have this opportunity to talk to you today. These are certainly confusing times, aren't they? This, we have all kinds of information, kind of an information overload. And on top of that, a lot of the information contradicts itself, and it's hard to know what to believe and what to accept. And ironically, it seems the more confusion there is, the louder and the bolder people are getting in declaring their own opinions. I would encourage restraint and humility. None of us are certainly experts on this coronavirus thing, and so we need to be careful. But on top of all that, I want to say to you that confusing times can be opportunities. The way the King James translation said it is we are commanded to redeem the time. That word time in our English language actually has a couple of different words in the Greek language that are both translated into our English word time. Maybe you've heard this before. I'm not a Greek scholar, and I don't want to make too much of this, but I don't want to make too little of it either. The Greek words are chronos and kairos. They're translated a couple places in the New Testament as times and seasons. Chronos, chronology, that's the time. That's the seconds and minutes and hours that make up our lifetime. The other word kairos is what's translated season. And when the Bible commands us to redeem the time, it's actually not a time management issue. It's not talking about using every second of our day. It's actually commanding us to make the most of every opportunity or make the best use of the time. It's maybe, if I were to paraphrase it, I could say we need to faithfully steward every season. And this is a unique season that God has given us and an opportunity to steward faithfully for His glory. And I would encourage you to think in those terms and to seek to do that more and more in obedience to those passages like Ephesians 5 and Colossians 4. I think one way to consider this would be in the language that's kind of become popular and people have riffed off of it. I think Piper started it. I could be wrong about that, but John Piper wrote a book called Don't Waste Your Cancer. It's talking about a season of life, and people have kind of picked up on that. There's a book called Don't Waste Your Sports. Don't waste, these others are maybe not books, but I've seen blogs and sermons. Don't waste your retirement. That's a unique season. Don't waste your youth, kind of on the other end of the spectrum. And we need to steward faithfully the season that God has put us in right now. And I want to encourage you to do that. Don't waste it. Don't waste this time of stay at home. Or whatever the orders and requests of our government are. Let's seek to steward them. I think we could waste them. Have you seen this? Some of the blog posts and things out there say things like, hey, here are some shows that are worth binge watching during this stay-at-home order. Well, I can't think of a more wasteful thing, a less faithful use of this season than just, I'm going to catch up on my favorite TV shows. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's interesting, even in this season, when we are really thinking through what's essential and not essential, you know what? TV and movies and concerts, not essential. And maybe we'll find out we missed them a lot less than we think we did, or that we think we would when they're gone. But don't just take this as a vacation. Maybe you need to catch up on some rest, but don't just think, I'm going to take this time and be lazy. That certainly would not be faithful stewardship either. And I know some of you don't even have that opportunity. This is a busier time than ever for you. But let's consider, what does it look like to be faithful stewards? Let's consider maybe this way. Have you ever said, I wish I had time to do that? Well, maybe this is time. Maybe this is the season when you can do some of those things. And I hope that some of those things that you wish you had time for and maybe now do would be spiritual pursuits. Let me suggest just two real quick. Maybe you could do some reading at this time. Read some books, read the Bible above all, but read some other books that could be helpful to your spiritual growth. Let me give you a resource. The Free Grace Broadcaster. I love this. It's a quarterly that's put out both digitally and in print. If you were to Google Free Grace Broadcaster, the first thing that comes up is this periodical. If you click on that, the first periodical that comes up, the first edition of that will be, the theme will be Redeem the Time. I love this quarterly because what it does, they take topics or themes, and then they compile sermons and articles and maybe portions of books from guys that probably are with the Lord now, Puritans and other church leaders from history. And I just find it immensely helpful. And right now, maybe that subject of redeeming the time would be particularly useful to you. But there are you can go back to all the volumes of the past and maybe find one that would be good reading. You can download the digital version free, or you can order a print copy and pay for that. But it's a great resource. And maybe you could read something like that or something else. Now, I raise this because of this latest volume that they have on redeeming the time. One of the articles in there is by a Puritan, Richard Baxter, and some of his recommendations, some of his the points that he gives on how to redeem the time, I think are very helpful. And so can I just suggest just read some of what he wrote, kind of paraphrase it maybe to make it a little easier to read and to hear. Baxter says, the price that time must be redeemed with is, and then he lists some of the prices. Here's what it looks like to pay the price to redeem the time. Number one, the price is our utmost diligence. He quotes a scripture, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. Number two, second price that he mentions to redeem the time must be redeemed by the loss of pleasure, sports, and parties. Now, again, not that there's anything inherently sinful about sports or even parties. In fact, I was just talking to somebody about the party we're going to have the first Sunday we're back here and able to meet together at Calvary, and I can't wait to that. But the idea here is, these things, we can waste a lot of time on sports and on other pleasures and parties. And we may have to give that up if we want to be faithful stewards of the season. And some of those have been removed from us without our consent anyway right now. We can't hang out with people. We can't go to parties. We're not, sports are shut down. Maybe God is giving you an opportunity. Maybe he's creating a season for you to redeem the time. Third price that I'll read from Baxter here. He says, time must be redeemed from worldly business. And again, I mention that because some of us aren't able to go to our jobs right now. He uses Martha as an example of this. He said, Martha should not so much as trouble herself in providing meat for Christ and his followers to eat when Christ is offering her food for her soul. She should, with Mary, have been hearing at his feet. And again, maybe that's what you should be doing right now in place of maybe worldly business that you would otherwise be occupied with. Fourth price that I'll mention here from Baxter, he says this, time must be redeemed from smaller responsibilities, which in their season must be done. In other words, there are things that you have to do, but it doesn't mean you have to do them all the time. Sometimes bigger responsibilities replace the smaller ones. He gives this example. It is a responsibility in its time and place to show respect to neighbors and superiors, to those about us, and to look to our family affairs, but not when we should be at prayer to God. Those are important things. Those are even commanded things. But that's why the Bible commands us to fast and pray and to give time to prayer. And again, maybe God is creating that margin for you right now where you can spend more time in prayer. That would be a way to redeem the time. And I would encourage you to think that. And in fact, I compiled a short prayer list here that I'm going to pass on to you. Extra prayer requests that you should be remembering at this season in particular. For example, think of those in our church family and beyond who are alone right now. You may think it's difficult, and it is, to sequester yourself with your little family, and you want and you need to be out with other people. But think about those who are isolated. They're sequestered in their homes by themselves. And I'd encourage you to pray for Maria and Helen and Dale and Gib at this time. And then I think second category of those kind of on the front lines in healthcare right now, pray for God's protection that they would stay healthy. Pray for their sanity. It's a time of chaos. Many are struggling. Pray for their energy and strength. And in our church family, that would be people like Chris and Emily and Diana and John Ross and Bryce and Emma and Brian and Amy and Troy. Pray for them and others like them beyond our church walls. And then finally, third category I just mentioned to you are those that are particularly high risk right now. I'm thinking about people in our church family like Joey and Stephanie and Bob. Pray for them. And if I missed you, I'm sorry. I tried to be thorough, but I realized I very possibly could have missed somebody. Or if I missed you, or if I missed somebody else that you know, I apologize. Please send that to me by email. I'll add to my prayer list those names of people that I haven't mentioned yet. But prayer is a way. Reading, prayer, these are ways to redeem the time, to steward faithfully this season, to make the most, to make the best use of this time. And I encourage you to think in terms like these. The Baxter's article ends this way, and I thought this might be helpful too. He says, private prayer, meditation, and visiting the sick are responsibilities, but not when we should be at church. And so I just want to end, even private prayer that I just talked about, meditation, reading that I've just talked about, these are important. But can you imagine especially now when we're keenly aware of how much we need and want to be with our church family. Can you imagine saying, "Oh, I'm not going to church today. I'm going to spend it in prayer"? That's just the ridiculous nature of that excuse is highlighted in this season. And so we long and we pray for the season to return when we can be at church, when we can be with church family. But until then, let's think about this season and what faithful stewardship looks like in this season, what it looks like not to waste this season. And I'm going to be talking to you in future posts about things that I'm thinking about for myself and for you of ways that we can redeem this season, that we can faithfully steward this season. And if you got some thoughts and lists, go ahead and email those to me. That might help kind of spur my thinking and my obedience as well. Let's seek in whatever ways we can to continue to stir one another up to love and good works. And I hope this little video will help you do that very thing. God bless you, and we'll talk to you again soon.